Hi, it's Lee from coloringqueen.net, and today I want to show you the markers that I purchased from Shein, and I wanted to see if they're any good. Now, as you can see from the packaging, they're packed up really tight, and I know some of you will be thinking, why didn't I just get the Ohuhu markers? And for one thing, I don't have Ohuhu money, and also they're rarely in stock in Australia and they're super expensive here. So I thought I'd just get some from Shein to supplement the ones that I bought from Temu to see if I could get some more colours. So it's really packed up nicely. It comes with this zip around bag that's got a handy carry-all, and inside it there is a case with slots for the 120 Chen Rui markers. Now these markers come in a number of sets. There are sets of 48, 60, 80, 120, and apparently 168, but to be honest, they never seem to be in stock and I've never seen them. Now, why I wanted this set was because it comes with the wanted brush and chisel tip. So you've got the chisel tip up one end, which depending on how you hold it, you can get a fine line. I know it seems surprising that that could be possible, but trust me, you can get a fine line with that chisel tip if that's what you want. And then on the other end, we have the lovely brush tip. Now, they are labelled, and you can see the marker there. It points to brush, and that way it points to broad. Now, they are presented standing up vertically. If you're going to use the brush marker all the time, I would stand it vertically pointed towards the brush so that the ink flows that way. But if you're going to use both ends of these dual tip markers, I would store them horizontally so that the ink is evenly dispersed. So let's get on with swatching them and see what they look like. I've already sorted them into color order, and I have created a swatch chart, which you can also have as well because I've got it as a free download. Now you can see, I'll just zoom you in a bit so that you can see how I've done the swatch chart. So I've got 3 little lines there that I'm going to swatch. And the reason for that is so that it can do 1 layer, 2 layers, and 3 layers. So that's so that you can see the difference in colour, that once it dries and you apply other layers to it, what other effects that you can get. And the reason that's useful is sometimes you just want to use 1 or 2 markers in your colouring, and then you can do that, say for wood grain or something like that, for that look, and you just get a different look of the marker depending on how many layers you do and how dry it is. So I'm just going to move this across so that we can colour in this swatch chart together. Now, as per usual, most of the lids on the barrels aren't an exact match to the actual colour. So starting off, we have a lot of cool greys. So there are 9 cool greys. So we're starting off with the half strength one, and I'm going to rotate between the brush and the broad stroke depending on which colour we're doing. So it's going on very easy with the brush. A lot of colour coming out, no spillage. Now what I'm going to do is just set that aside for a minute and go on with the next ones so that they can dry. Now let's try the chisel tip on this one. This is cool grey 1. And there is a slight difference in tone between this one and the previous marker. And normally with the chisel tip you probably want to do little circles instead of lines straight across like I did. And CG2. which is again another cool grey. We are really getting darker here. The markers are juicy, but not spilling and not overly juicy. So far I'm very happy with that, and I'm happy with the gradient in colour, because if you're like me and you like to colour all those cute and cozy books that have little animals in it, having a variation of the greys is super helpful. So that's even darker on the cool grey there. Now what I'll do is I'll probably offline go through and do those extra layers, because otherwise we'll be here until Christmas. And this is another cool grey. I'll go in circles this time with the brush, with the chisel tip, sorry. And that is way darker again. So these greys are really useful for shadows and whatnot. This is cool grey 5. I know some people love using the chisel tip, some people love using the brush tip. I haven't used markers enough to have a preference, but I know when I have played with the chisel tip that it does get a lot finer than what you might expect. I'll keep getting all the chisel tip ends on this, but hopefully we'll find some that have been stored brush tip soon. But what I am impressed with is, first of all, the colour gradient range, and second of all, that they're not overly juicy. So they're not dry and scratchy, and they're not so juicy that they're splattering colour everywhere, because this is just printed on copy paper, not on marker paper. So if they're too juicy, they will bleed out all over the place. So we'll make sure we use the brush tip of this one. That's really dark. Now, I'm not sitting, because of the light, etc., and the camera here, I'm not sitting like I normally would to colour in, because otherwise my head will hit the light. So if I was sitting up close and normally how I would sit, I would be a lot more detailed in this and not go out of the lines. And the last cool grey is number 9. And so that's like really like nearly a black. So far I'm pretty impressed with that. It's still easy enough to see my second little lines that I've drawn there to do those extra layers on. So I'll come back and do like layer 2 up to there, and then layer 3 on the first little square. But so far, nice range of greys there. Okay, now we've got a range of green greys. So these are ones that have got like a greenish tint to them. I can't really see it, to be honest, but it is definitely different from the cooler greys. And for doing these little squares, I'm finding that the chisel tip and the way I'm sitting is much easier to do than the brush tip when you're in an uncomfortable position. Much easier for me to stay within the lines. And this one will be the last green grey. You have to swap over and start using those brush tips so that you can see. Now we've got blue grey. And who would have thought they would have put so many different types of greys in this set? So this has a real blue tinge to it. It's very nice, and the brush is really good. Another blue grey, and we'll use the brush again. Now, unlike some brands, there were no replacement nibs with this particular product, which is disappointing. And so when one does start to run out, I'm going to, pull it apart and see if you can put the nib in the other way. Like some markers have a brush tip all the way, so you can turn it around because there's no replacement nibs. But for Aussies, these pack of markers from Shein are pretty cost effective because I think for the 120 they were about $58, which was pretty good. And that's Australian dollars, so my friends in the US, it would be like half the price, or at least 3/4 of the price. So this is Blue Grey 9. And this one's got a real dark blue here. It's pretty nice. Don't mind some of these as house colours. And the last in this column is black. Always got to have a black. And we can just see the difference in tone between those other colours. Now, I do prefer using the chisel to do my swatch chart. Now, we're not finished with the greys yet. We still have the warm greys to go. So, sorry, you might have been out of screen while I was doing that black. Okay, let's do the warm greys. So, starting off with warm grey 5. And you can see the nib colour, the barrel colour, is sort of very soft looking brown, but when it goes on, it's far darker than what the barrel cover is. So that's why you need to have a swatch chart. So we've got warm grey 5 there. Let's go with warm grey 7. And quite darker for that one. Then we've got warm grey 8, and it looks kind of grey on the barrel. Now, I would like it if they did include replacement nibs. So far, all the colour, the alcohol is going on really well, but I do wonder if you can get a replacement nib. So we'll try this one. I wonder if maybe if you can't, if you could put a Copic nib in there, but they're pretty good price. And there's a different range of sets, so depending on how many you want. Now, they don't have a pastel set, which would be nice. So that's it for our warm greys. Now we're going to get onto the browns. And we need browns because that's what our teddy bears are made of. So we're starting off with chestnut brown, which is way darker than what I thought it would be. And certainly darker than the barrel colour. Then 99, which is bronze. So as well as not having a replacement nibs, there also, in this set, there is no blender marker. Now, a blender marker is the clear coloured marker, and it's really great to not so much blend, but to take colours off. So if you made a mistake, you can dab it out basically by using the blender mark. You can lighten alcohol with the blender marker, and you can make textures with it as well. So by just dabbing it in different little ways, you can sort of create like a little fluffy texture, which is very popular in the cozy colouring books in particular. So that was 91, which was natural oak. So personally, I wouldn't be worried about it not having a blender marker. So now we've got burnt sienna. So the reason I wouldn't worry about not having a blender marker is you might be like me and use that blender marker all the time. Now, I'll tell you one thing, I don't really use it with alcohol markers. I use it all the time with my coloured pencils because it's really great for blending pencils in. So, 93, burnt orange. And you can see that this is not really an orange. That's why I put it in with the browns. So I use a lot of blender markers, and I think I've actually got a video around here somewhere on the channel for making your own blender marker fluid. But what you can do, so there's our browns. You can see how those blue greys are really blue. Okay, let's go on to mahogany. So what you can do is buy a Copic marker, a blender marker, if you wish, or you can even buy just a Copic blank, or if you don't want to buy Copic for some reason, you hate them or you can't get them or whatever, you can buy blanks of like Molotow markers, and then you just fill them up with the blender fluid. And the great thing about Copic is that you can buy the blender fluid refills, you can buy replacement nibs, so you can, refill that marker to your little heart's content. If you like also using pencils as well, you can use it to blend out your pencils, but make sure you check it on a little test page first on something that you don't like in case there is a mistake. That one was potato brown. So you can just basically just keep refilling that marker all the time and have your own blender marker, even if the set that you purchase, it might not be this one, doesn't have a blender pen. Now, there are other brands, for example, I think Derwent has blender pens as well, Spectrum Noir, but, each to their own. I just think that Copic is really easy to purchase. It seems to be available in most places, but I'm sure you can find other brands as well if you didn't want to use Copic. But the advantage of Copic is that you could buy replacements for both the nib and for the fluid, or you can make your own fluid if you want. So this is 135 pale cherry pink. Now I've tried to put them into rough color family order, but it's not easy, and depending on the type of paper that you're using, the color could look differently, and depending on how many layers that you're using. So this is pale cherry pink. And my dog seems to be doing laps of the house at the moment, so I hope he's not disturbing you. This is flesh. Now we have raw umber. I feel like I've made a mistake on this swatch chart, but I guess I'll figure it out in a minute. So I had made a mistake. I'd put flesh in twice. So what I've done is I've come back and gone up to where I should have been up to, which is up to walnut as our next colour. But of course, when it rains, it pours for problems. So in the meantime, I got overly excited and put too much grey across the blue greens. I had to cut that one out because I don't have a printer at home. So I'd have to actually, wait for David to come home and go and print the page again if I hadn't cut that out. And then, of course, the fan blew up and smudged the marker I was colouring with. So forgive all the errors that I have made swatching this. So let's get back into it with walnut, olive green, and putty. So 100 was walnut. Sorry, I've already done that one. Then we've got olive green. And this is a real olive green. Now the caps are coloured on both ends of these markers, making it easy for you to see the colour, but the colour is nothing like the colour once it's swatched out. But on different papers, colours can look different. So on marker paper, it'll probably look a lot brighter. This is putty at 169. Okay, so now we'll move on to our yellows. The first one is dark yellow. I never thought I'd enjoy using the chisel tip as much as I do, but for these swatches, I find it really useful. Now, that doesn't look anything yellow to me. It looks more like a tan. So I don't really like the names that they've come up with for these markers. This is yellow ochre. That's number 101. Now I'm going to go back and do those second and third layers when this is dry and show you at the end what it looks like with the extra colours on there. 107 is sand. And that is a nice sand colour. 109 is pearl white. Okay, I'm expecting this to be quite light. And it is. It's sort of like an ecru colour. So I don't know whether I did the right thing trying to squeeze all these markers onto the one page, but it just makes it handier for me, I find. And what I could do is actually chop them out if I wanted to. I've done that previously with things, chopped them out, put them on a key ring, just to make it easier. 45 is Canaria yellow, and the barrel looks very fluoro-y, and the colour looks more like a lime yellow, fluoro lime yellow. We have got 123, which is the fluorescent yellow. Good for your fires and your lighting. Then we have lemon yellow, number 35. So I'd love to know who's really getting into the bold and easy colouring books, and if you only use markers with them. Because I'm finding after using pencils for so long that it's a bit weird for me to be using markers. French vermilion. Now, I don't know whether you guys are noticing as well, but the selection of yellows is pretty low. Now, out of all the markers I've had so far, this French vermilion is the driest. Now, that's not to say it is dry, it just feels less juicy than the others. And 122 is fluorescent orange. So we've got a few fluorescents in here. This is not as fluorescent as I expected to be. I expected it to be more high vis. Okay, so let's start with Vermilion, number 14. And so it's a orangey red. And using the chisel tip there. Marigold. Yeah, I would expect a marigold to be a bit brighter orange, but each to their own. I wonder who gets in charge of making these colours. 34 is yellow. And we'll try the brush tip for this one. Goes on super easy. But there are no replacement nibs. I'd be interested if anyone has actually used like a Copic nib or something, or if you can actually pull the nibs out. 26 is Pastel Peach. And I would be interested if anyone has actually seen or purchased the elusive 168 Chen Rui markers. So now we've got Barely Beige, because every time I see them, they advertise them as having them, but there is never any set available. And then we have Skin White. This might be handy if you've got people in your books or for little highlights on your little animals if you're colouring those sorts of things. So we've finished our yellows and oranges, which is a bit disappointing. But now we've got number 1, which is Wine Red. And it's very dark. You can see a purple undercurrent there. That is a very, very dark colour. Then we've got Old Red. So it's more like a claret or something. I don't think we can ever have enough colours as colorists, can we? 12 is Coral Red, because no matter how many markers or pencils I get, I always think I need more. And I mean, I know that the Ohurus have got over 400 colours, I think, which is more than the Copics, so that just makes me want them as well. And then we've got Geranium. That's a nice enough red. I think I like the coral red and the geranium there. I could imagine using those quite a bit. So let's do the pinks, which they do seem to have a lot of. So we've got cherry pink. Rose red. Now, because this is just on copy paper, it's going to absorb right through. It's not thick paper at all. Like, you get the best results by using proper marker paper. So fluorescent rose. But not many colouring books are printed on marker paper. And quite frankly, it'd probably be pretty expensive for the publishers, the artists to do. That fluorescent rose isn't bad, but completely nothing like the caps. So 126 is fluorescent pink. And that's a real hot pink. It's very juicy marker, that one, but it's not spilling. There is some, good marker paper that you can buy, like Ohuhu have marker paper. But my personal favourite is Express Blended Card. It because it's thicker, it allows extra time for the markers to actually be able to blend while they're still wet, and it doesn't bleed through on the paper either. And that's the problem you have with just normal colouring book paper from Amazon. It does bleed through, and you have to be pretty quick to be able to blend anything because the paper really can't handle much. But if you are able to buy digital downloads, then you can print it out on your own paper. But of course, that does get exy as well. So it's, just all a matter of working out how you like to colour and what you want to do. Now, 9 is pale pink. What I wish that these lower budgety brands from Shein and Temu, I wish that they had like a set of pastels, because I don't find anything, much here so far that's like truly really pastel, like really pale, unless we're talking the greys. 84 is pastel violet. I mean, it's nice, delicious looking colour. Tender pink, but I'm not seeing like the really light colours that you can get in the Ohu brands and of course in the Copic range. And the reason, that it's good to have like all these variations in the colour, even in the same tone, like these cool greys, is that you can form a gradual gradient and they blend really easy. So for markers, you kind of want 3 or 4 of the same colours, so that they'll all blend in a smooth transition. And with these ones, because there's quite a lot of variation in between the colours, you might have difficulty getting that smooth blend if that's something that you're after. So we've got pastel pink here. Let's see how pastel it is. And I wouldn't call that pastel. It's nice, but it's not, the really subdued pastels that I like. So we've got purple grey. Now this is a softer tone than the brighter pastel pink that we just had. And now we're going to get into medium pink. And then it'll be into the violets. And that brush nib is not moving, it's not fraying or coming apart, so that's holding up really well, and it doesn't look like it's got any signs. Some you can get, they seem to fray as soon as you use them. Now this is actually the 3rd time that I've swatched these, so because I seem to be cursed with mistakes. So I have used the nibs on them quite a bit without any issue to date. So we've got deep violet, and now we've got light violet. I would like it if they use consistent numbering, because like the way the Copics are numbered, you can always tell what colour family they're in, like CG is cool grey, but once they do the greys in this, they don't use any more descriptive numbering. But look, you can't have everything, can you? So now we've got azalea purple. Pretty nice. Vivid purple is next. That's a nice sort of red violet there. Then we're going to have pale lilac. Let's see how pale you can be. We'll switch to the chisel. Ultramarine. Now you can get this swatch as well if you want the colour chart. It'll be available for a free download at the link in the description box of the video. And the description box is just right under the video. And if you're using a mobile, you often have to click around a few buttons to find it. But it's just there, the link, and you just go to the link, download it, print it out on whatever you fancy. It's designed for US letter size, but for Australians that use mainly A4, it's just slightly smaller, so you just adjust your printer for that. Okay, so we've got our pinks and purples there. Let's move on with more purples. Got pale purple. It's a nice colour, but it's still not as pale as I would like to see. So I'm hoping one of these big companies is out there working on a lovely pastel set. Dark blue light. I see that Ohuhu, of course, have got pastels. Copic have got pastels. Spectrum Noir, pastels. I see Artex have got some lovely pastels as well, but in the really super cheapies, I don't see anything. So if you do know of anything, I'd like to know. Now, this one that I just did that looks purple was called Dark Blue Light. So the names just don't mean anything. 64 is Indian Blue. It's a lovely sort of tealy colour. Then we've got 62, which is Marine Blue. And that is a gorgeous teal colour. I love that colour. It's my favourite. I'd love to have a kitchen that colour, but I don't know whether I'd get sick of it or not. Then we've got 63, which is Cerulean Blue, which, again, it's nothing like a Prismacolor Cerulean Blue. 65 is Ice Blue. Now, you would expect this to be super light, but again, it's not. It's more of a turquoise. And we've got turquoise blue. I'm going to colour all these boxes and do the second and third layer offline as well. Turquoise blue, we've got 179, aqua mint. I'm loving this range of turquoise and teals here, and this aqua. I love it when these colours come back into fashion all the time and you see all the clothes with them. It's been a while. Now, 182 is frost blue. Now, you would expect this to be pretty light, and it is light. I don't know that it's frosty, but it's certainly a nice pastel colour. And so far, I like the colours. I just wish that there were, more yellows, more oranges, more pastels. And I'm wondering if that 168 set does exist, if that it had more of those colours in it. I really don't think there's that many yellows. These two are kind of fluoro, and that's very more orangey yellow or yellow orange. So it'd be nice just to have some yellow. So 69, we've got Prussian blue. And 71, we've got cobalt blue. '74 is brilliant blue. And 70 is royal blue. So I'm liking the markers. I've swatched them now 3 times, as I said, and They've been very easy to use. They're going on the paper, no problems. There's no spillage, there's no super dryness or anything like that. It is disappointing that there's no refills, no replacement, and it doesn't come with a blender pen. But none of those things really matter to me because the price of them is pretty cheap for Australians. And it means I can just purchase replacements if I need to. I just buy the whole set because it works out pretty cheap for us Aussies. Whereas a lot of other products will get really expensive on the Australian dollar, especially when you add in shipping. So that was $183. Obviously, the real test comes when you pop them in your colouring book, and I will be doing that as well, popping them on a colouring book page, seeing how they go on that Amazon KDP paper. So 143, we've got mint blue. And also once they dry, as you can see here, they do lighten tad, like hardly anything to write home about, but just something small. Now, bronze green. What it does have is a lot of greens in this set, so if you do like, nature scenes and whatnot, you're going to find that you've got heaps of greens. Alright, so we've only got another 20 to go, so we've already done 100 markers. So now we're up to 174, which is spring dim green. And this is a lovely sort of sagey green colour. I like that. Then we've got green bice. I'm noticing that even though I'm just using marker paper, I'm away from the desk quite a lot, is that they're not really bleeding. Like any of the out of lines that you're seeing, it's just because of the weird position that I'm sitting in order to avoid the light hitting me on the head. The other day I did a video and didn't realize that my hair was flying up in the fan the whole way through. Because sometimes to colour I'm just that far under the light and there's nowhere else for me to move it. That was the fluorescent green. So we've got those nice greens, but we've still got heaps more to go. So now we've got forest green. Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how they go in the colouring books. That's a nice green. I like that. Could imagine using that. I wish they'd come out and sell individuals, but you might be able to colour match it with a Copic and refill them, but I'm not sure. I'll have to wait till one dries out if you can replace those nibs, if they are refillable. But again, the price of them is pretty cheap. So 178. So for me, I think these worked out like less than 50 cents a marker, which I can't buy anything cheaper than that. So 172. What I liked about them was that they came with the brush, and it's a bit hard to get these brands on the cheap sites that are brush and chisel. Most of them are a fine point or a bullet point and chisel, or some of them aren't dual tip at all. So to get the brush and chisel was the real selling point to me. 4. $57. And this is turquoise green light. Now, that does not look turquoise. It doesn't look light at all. And then we have 52, deep green. 43 is deep olive green. 56 is mint green. And that doesn't look a mint green to me. It looks more like a grass green. So don't rely on the colours or the barrels when you're choosing your colours. 55 is emerald green. That does look emeraldy green. It looks like. And we've got 46, which is vivid green. Not a lot of difference between this one and the one previous, but it does have more brightness to it. And 47, grass green, which it's a nice colour. I can imagine using this quite a bit. And 59 is pale green. Now, I've tried to keep them into tones, but obviously colour is a personal thing, and depending on lighting, I might have got those colours wrong. And 167, lucky last, pale green light. So they're meant to be in colour order, but hopefully I've got them right, but we've all got different ways that we see colour. So I am going to go back and I am going to go over those and do the second and third layer, and I will show you what that looks like at the end. But let's just have a look at it just now. And what we can see is we've got heaps of choice of greys. No problem there whatsoever. And some of these, you know, green greys and blue greys, they're really nice. I can imagine using those for shadows and whatnot. We don't have a huge range of browns, like if we were doing teddy bears or something like that. There's some sort of reddish browns and whatnot, and we've got some yellows and sands and things like that. But there's not a huge range. So if you're doing like lots of little animals and you want like a more tanny colours, not a lot there. But, you know, great news if you're doing koalas or other grey type things and you want a natural looking colour. Now, with the yellows, I said before, pretty disappointed with the range of yellows, not much there at all, and the range of oranges. We've got a few reds there, and I'm pretty happy with those. Pinks, purples, you know, and the blues and greens, they're great. I think, you know, more of them would be even better. But as a little starter set, not bad. Now, compared to the Gin Flash ones that I got from Temu, again, that's the same sort of deal, you know, hardly any yellows, but they did seem to have, you know, a nice range of colours here. But I suspect that some of these, like if you put them up next to each other, that they're actually the same colour. So this is a set of 80. And it doesn't have the range of greys, but that might make some people happy. But I'd like to swatch this out again because I do think that some of these colours are very, very similar. And I think like a lot of these factories, they, you know, white label products or whatnot. So it's basically the same product with different names. So I don't think these are, but these are only 80 and we've got 120 in this set. But they're both pretty good with the brush and the chisel tip. This one obviously has more colours, which for me, more colours is a good thing. But I still think you'd need to supplement with pastels or something like that if you do like pastels. But we'll see what they look like with those different layers. But before we do that, let's test them in a colouring book and see how they perform on the Amazon KDP paper. So I've got Fuzzy Tails, cute colouring book. I haven't coloured a picture from this book yet, but it is printed on the Amazon paper. Now, with the Amazon KDP paper, there are different factories, so wherever you end up buying it from, they do the printing at the sort of local factory. And you can see on the back, this one was printed in Sydney, New South Wales, Australia, because I bought it from the Amazon Australia website. Got a piece of paper behind to protect the paper. Now, these are the gin flash markers that I just showed you the swatch chart from, that I bought from Temu. So let's test out these Chen Rui markers and see how they go. So I think what we might do is go with this 52 deep green, and we'll use the chisel on one of them. Let's just see how it does the lines. So you can really do easy lines there. And remember, I'm sitting far away. And if you turn that chisel around, you can get different effects. So turning it like that, you can get a finer line if you want to do strokes or things like that. So pretty good. And if you want to use that for larger colouring, just, turn it around and you can go over it, do little tiny circles. Just keep moving on before it dries, because otherwise you will get two different colour looks, one being the overlay of colour that you've already put on and it'll dry like a shadow, but that might actually be the look that you want. So I'm just going to go all over it so it is like 2 layers of colours. So really good coverage there, pretty smooth, and that was with the brush tip. Let's try, sorry, that was with the chisel tip. Let's try with a brush tip. So it's labelled, so I'll go this way for the brush tip. Goes on really smoothly. We don't want to hold our brush down straight. We want to go on the side, because if we go on the side, it won't fray out that brush and push it down and make that little brush go all over the place. So it goes on very smooth, no pressure on the brush. It looks perfectly fine, and I have used them a few times now. But we know it's going to bleed through because our Amazon KDP paper is not bleed proof. So you can see the 2 layers that I did with the chisel tip has bled through onto the copy paper, and they've all bled through to the back, but only because this was 1 layer, it hasn't actually bled through onto this. It's just ghosted a little bit of paraffin. So that's interesting. It was only the 2 layers that went right through. So it goes great in our colouring books, and that's what we want. We're getting the coverage and really easy to use. So I'm going to go back and do those layers now, and I'll come back and show you what they look like. So I've finished doing those extra layers, the second and the third layer, and I've had to put a bit of sticky tape over that one that I messed up. But what we can see is the difference that adding 1, 2, or 3 layers makes to your markers. So if you want to just do easy shading, you can use the same marker. So you don't see it so much on the lighter greys, it's a bit difficult. But the third box is just 1 layer, then the second box is 2 layers, and the third box is 3 layers. So you can see it makes a real difference here as we get into the darker tones of the cool greys. And not so much when you're getting into the really dark greys and the blacks. It's kind of all a much of a muchness. You'd have to have a pretty discerning eye to notice a lot of difference there. But you do notice it in the blue greys, the green greys, the warm greys, and in all of these browns, like this burnt orange down here. There's a real difference between the burnt orange 1 layer and the 2 and 3. And as we're coming down into all of these colours, we really do notice the difference in between doing 3 layers or 2 layers or 1 layer. Now with these yellows, not so much. They pretty well look pretty well the same, but we do see the difference here in the yellows, not so much in the reds. And just my colouring when I'm trying to avoid the light is really sloppy and out of the lines. And we even notice it with some of these lighter colours, not so much, but they're pastel to begin with, so it's a little bit harder to see. So that's one way of getting a bit of colour variation without having to buy some more markers that are in the same tone. But there's still, there's a good variety here, and we've got 120 colours, but, I'll still stick with what I said earlier, that I feel like it could have some more yellows in it for me personally, and, there's a lot of greens, but I just feel like yellow is a little bit lacking. But I don't think it's really going to make that much of a difference. Like, we can blend our colours together. We can change the tone by changing the number of layers. So at least it's a pretty good starting point. And for the price, for us Aussies, it's a really good deal. So that's it for my review of the Chen Rui markers from Shein. If you'd like a colour chart so that you can swatch out your own and not make such a mess of it like I did, you can pick it up from the link below for free. And that's it from me. Until next time, stay safe and happy colouring.